Hi, I'm Daniel Likis.
Hi, I'm Sal Cosenza.
And welcome to Abstract Essay. Abstract Essay is created to empower artists like us. Don't you think, Mr. Sal?
I do. I think now's the time more than ever to be empowered and to get your
Yes,
ideas out there. So I'm happy to
definitely.
be back. How was your week, Daniel? Did you do anything creative besides the 100 podcasts?
Yes, of course. My baby
Yes.
podcast, I did publish last Monday.
Which one is that
Yes.
again?
Mental Health 101. Would you
Nice.
be a contributor to my new podcast?
I'd be
Let's
honored.
yes, let's empower mental health awareness
Mhm.
all over the world because nowadays we need to empower these mental sickness.
Yes. And actually in my one of my classes we're working with an art therapist.
Oh wow.
So it's really interesting how there are different types of art per client, right? So based on the client's needs, they might do painting, they might do spoken word. There's a whole a gamut of different
Definitely.
approaches.
I think doing paintings is a mental health reliever. What
Oh,
do you
for
think?
sure, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Sometimes it's like an exorcist. You're exercising whatever's in there, whatever's, broiling in that mind.
Yes. Yes, people,
But
Mr. Sals have a DNA of Mr. Leonardo da Vinci. So, with no
one day
further
he's
ado,
gonna, one day Leonardo's gonna wake up and just like come up to me and,
so with no further ado, let's give a
yes.
drum roll for the painting of Mr. Sal Cosenza.
Well, thank you. And let me share screen. And naturally, I screwed the timing of the drum roll.
Whoa!
But
One more. Yes,
okay, can you see
amazing.
it?
Yes,
All right.
everybody can see it.
Okay, so for those joining us, and if you had seen the last episode, we started getting into domestic New York, my big series, 57 installments. I started it in 2006. I finished it in 2019. So I had, plenty of room along the way to explore a bunch of different ideas and stories. And I kind of saw this series always almost as a sitcom where the two buildings you're seeing here, Empire State Building and Chrysler Building, they drive the story. They're engaged in different sorts of activities. Some of them, as you see here, more risque, others more pedestrian and silly. Well, I guess this is silly too, right? What we're looking at, but so we're in sort of the sophomore year period of this series. Last time we
Yes.
looked at the very beginning ones, 2006. I was still sort of figuring out what I was going to do with this series in terms of its tone. I think by the time we get to here, 2008, I'm much more confident in what they're going through, what these characters are going to go through. So this one that we're looking at is called Domestic New York: A Soaring Affair. It was created in 2008, and it's actually the biggest, I think the biggest canvas in this series. It's 36 inches by 48 inches. And so if you remember from the last episode, most of those were very pocket size, those canvases.
Yes.
So I chose to go big. And this one also is significant because it's I think the first in the series. There will be others. It's the first that sort of does this bird's eye view. So this sort of ceiling shot looking down, which I always felt was really dynamic and exciting. So, in the past, you saw stuff like this where it's sort of just
Yes.
flat, right? But I always thought of the environment that the buildings are in as sort of like a set, like set design, right? So not necessarily like an actual environment. Um, Again, it goes along with this idea of the sitcom, right? If these are If it's a sitcom, they need some sort of set. So in this particular one, you have the two buildings. I guess they got to meet each other finally, right? I think it well, never mind. Yeah, they did meet in Friends at Play previously. They, here they are. They're starting to date. They're going to art galleries. But then here's, the big night, right? The big night happens. And I don't think I have to describe what that means, right? But
The big night.
right, I remember creating this, and I was working on this in a gallery, and the gallery eventually where this painting would be exhibited, um, Art One Gallery. I remember working on it in their Tempe, Arizona location, which was another location they had at the time. And, one of the gallery owners or operators, they kept sort of throwing ideas at me. They're like, "Hey,
Yes.
why don't you put a dress on the floor? Why don't you put, certain other things on the floor?" So, it got naughty really quickly, and I even have a little. Can I say this? Yeah, I have a
Yes.
little whip. There's a little whip, but anyway,
With
um,
Nene.
there's a whip in the closet. So, they're having a good time, let's say. But you can see like outside the window, there's a little car. So there's a sidewalk on the left and the street and sort of a manhole cover. So it's a little, it's a New York apartment, probably, sort of a more contemporary one. But I loved using the color red here. I think we talked about last time how red was one of my favorite aspects of this one. Mrs. Chrysler, you're trying to seduce me.
Mm.
So I brought the red back, I think to sort of say something about romance and passion. Okay, so that one was done. What did I follow it up with? I followed it up with a very small painting. This is only 18 inch by 18 inch, also from 2008, and it's sort of one of the few tributes in this series to one of my favorites, Frank Sinatra. And so this one's called Domestic New York, One Night Only with Old Blue Eyes. And here you have, the chairman of the board singing. It's sort of his later years, right? So he's got his silver toupee. um, He's got a bottle, or he's got a glass rather, of Jack Daniels in his hand, right? In the other hand, you could see just a piece of the microphone. His tux is very well fitted. Um, but I'm thinking, one night only. So, he had passed away for a while, since 2008. I think he died in 1998. Um, but if there was one night only and he sort of came back to perform, this was kind of the idea I was going for. So I have it's almost like a cosmic scene, this concert setting. It's like little stars, almost like a solar system. So again, it sort of speaks to almost a tribute if Frank were to return, right? And then in the audience, of course, I have all buildings in attendance, right? So I've got Empire State and Chrysler donning their elegant, attire. Empire State has a bow tie. Chrysler Building has a string of pearls. Um, Nearby, you have the Citicorp building here watching. You've got Trinity Church. You've got 40 Wall Street. And then this building, which I hope you could see my cursor, but
Yes.
this building I remember picking because it was located in Hoboken, New Jersey, which was where Frankie was born, right? So another little silly Easter egg that I put in there. Okay, next. This one, this one so the original one, I don't know where it is. Somebody has it, but I'm sure I hope that it's hanging in some sort of restroom or, um, right? So I know I have a print. My father has one in his restroom, framed of this. And so, it's kind of obvious what we're looking at, right? But the title is called Domestic New York Business as Usual, also from 2008. 18-inch by 24-inch piece. Uh, what I remember from this one is, so this drawing that you see here,
Yes.
it's on the side, it says Isabella. So Isabella is my niece, one of my nieces. And I remember at the time she drew this sketch, and for whatever reason, I guess we talked about incorporating it in the piece. And so I remember I wanted to just redraw her sketch. I thought it would look nice,
Nice. Yes.
sort of, it was appropriate, right? Um, what else? Well, this one, some of it aged poorly. I have references to certain people. I'd rather not say who they are, but I've got other headlines here. Empire State to be cleaned. Uh, Trinity Church has a birthday. Dow tumbles. So again, a lot of silly things. Empire State Building smoking a cigarette, which we don't advise anymore. He's listening to a radio, right? So the radio is blaring. Um, and then this, I remember wanting to show the mirror, and the door was closed. I don't know why. Why did I show that? But and the grid, I remember this was the first time I painted like a tile wall with
Mm.
grout and such, and I remember liking that process, so I think I repeated that in forthcoming domestic New York installments. So that's business as usual. This one, as Empire State is taking care of business, the Chrysler Building's going to the movies. This is domestic New York, Chrysler Building's favorite film. And naturally, what would Chrysler Building watch if she was going to the movies? She would watch King Kong, right? And she would watch her favorite building starring in the movie, right? And that's her favorite scene. So you could see King Kong up here fighting the planes, and here's Empire State. Um, Again, you've got the audience sort of watching a mix of buildings and humans. This one was 10-inch by 14-inch. Um, what else could I remember? I remember painting this one in one of my classes when I was a student at ASU, which now I teach there. So everything's all
Mhm.
full circle. Okay, this one. Next we have Domestic New York, Never Play the Odds. This one was slightly more, you could say, sophisticated, right, than the previous couple that we had seen. This one's also from 2008. It's 24 by 36 inches. I remember I love James Bond, like the James Bond movies, and my most favorite James Bond actor is Roger Moore.
Yes.
And I watched For Your Eyes Only, I remember was one of his, and he's playing Baccarat, right, in that scene, as James Bond usually does, right? There's usually a casino scene, um, but I just liked the positioning of the characters in that shot in the movie, and so I remember taking a photo of the film and then sort of replicating the same exact angles and even adding some of the people from the movie, the characters, into this painting. But then I just replaced, Empire State and Chrysler with, I think, Bond and whoever was next to Bond. I replaced a character here with St. Patrick's Cathedral. But you can see, I do remember that this gentleman in the white tuxedo with the sunglasses for some reason um, was featured in the movie. The background also, and including this lamp, were all sort of borrowed from that scene. And then in the background here, I added another Easter egg of my other Manhattan series. So it's kind of a variation on one of those paintings. So again, I enjoyed sort of putting some of my work in my work, which I always found like kind of interesting. So this piece, 24 by 36, also from 2008. 2008 was a very busy year for this series. um, and it was eventually purchased by the future mayor of Scottsdale. So I,
Wow.
I remember that, and I think
Congratulations.
I think it still hangs in his home. And he had purchased like 5 of these, so I'm really grateful for that.
Awesome.
Okay, next we have Domestic New York, 85 Years of Magic. And why would I call
Wow.
it 85 Years
85
of
years of
Magic?
magic.
Yeah, so I'm a big Yankee fan. A lot of my mother is also, and a lot of family members are. So in 2008, that was the last year that the original Yankee Stadium was to function. It was going to be demolished, and then the following year, 2009, they rebuilt Yankee Stadium. And so I wanted to create sort of a tribute to the original stadium. So that and the original stadium was built in 1923. So 2008 minus 23, I hope that's 85 years. So that's where the title comes from. But the rest is pretty self-explanatory, right? You could see just a crowd. Naturally, the Yankees are playing the Boston Red Sox, and if anyone follows, that those two teams are arch rivals. And of course, I have the Yankees win by 7, so 7-0. You could see the scoreboard in the back, and in the foreground, nothing is more New York than the Yankees, I think. They're very New York, right? So why
Yes.
not why not have the Empire State Building and the Chrysler and a few other famous buildings in there? I have jerseys, people are wearing from players across the Yankee history. So Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, Derek Jeter. I think that's Joe DiMaggio is mentioned. So hope the Yankee organization doesn't sue me, but but it was a long time ago. It was 2008. Okay.
Yes.
All
It's
right.
been a
And
long time.
moving on. How am I doing on time? I have a few more minutes.
You have still have like 10 minutes.
Okay. Man, 2008 was packed. The
So
next one in
fast.
the next one in that year, Domestic New York, Blues in the Night, also from 2008. It's only 10 inches by 12 inches. I remember completing this one, I think in like a day. It was
Yes.
just one of those,
A
I had a chance.
day.
I think so. Yeah, it was either a day or two. Um, and
Awesome.
so again, like some of them in this series were very time consuming, intricate, and others were just sort of like on a whim, right? I just sort of went with it. So this was a very small one. I just wanted to sort of capture again that sort of Frank Sinatra ambiance of late night, sort of in a little jazz bar. So you have this dramatic shadow of a saxophone player hitting the wall. The wall itself is cracked and sort of it's lived in this environment, right? This set. And then, of course, you've got the Chrysler building sort of off center in the middle, smoking another long cigarette, using her gargoyles to do so. Man, this series is very pro smoking. I forgot how pro smoking it is, and I don't even smoke, but I feel like it was necessary.
Yes.
All right, and then
For
here's
your
another
community.
just lovey-dovey one. Happy
Yes.
Valentine's Day, by the way, everybody.
Happy
Uh,
Valentine's.
it's a day late, but love is eternal, so who cares? Domestic New York, this one's called Making Whoopee, and that's
Whoopee.
exactly what they're doing in Central Park on a little boat called the SS Making Whoopee, by the way. This is a 16-inch by 20-inch piece. It's just, I love Central Park. I hope everyone gets at least one chance in life to go there. It's just like
Yes.
it's a magical
Please.
design, right? So I wanted to sort of honor Central Park in a way. Um, Again, very self-explanatory, right? You've got the buildings falling in love. You've got hearts floating around them. Um, and then there's another pair in the background. Okay, and then this one is called Domestic New York, the Coney Island Effect.
Nice.
24 by 36. This was 2009, so I'm done with the '08 portion. But this one sort of represents everything I love about Coney Island, which is another place in New York I recommend that everybody check out at least once. If you go there, you can, have a Nathan's hot dog. You can take a ride on the Cyclone roller coaster or the Wonder Wheel in the background. It's all here. You could check out Luna's Funhouse. I sound like a tour guide, but I wanted to turn Coney Island into sort of a romantic getaway for the two buildings in the foreground. So you got Chrysler Building and Empire strolling one of the boardwalks there, but in a Coney Island way. So Empire's holding some cotton candy, and Chrysler's got a Nathan's hot dog in her gargoyle, which sounds dirty. That sounds
Hmm.
really dirty. Anyway, let's moving on. This piece I did for actually a lawyer who he just sort of challenged me. I met him once and he said, you know what, if you he saw I was doing a courtroom scene, but he said
Yes.
if you throw me in the painting, uh, I will buy this piece. And so I'm like, you know what? You're on deal,
What
right?
about that?
So this one, this one was called Domestic New York. Even buildings have jury duty because we
Mm.
all have jury duty. How fun that is, right? But this is 18 by 24 inches, 2009. Um, in here, I have uh, certain family members are depicted in the jury pool, in the jury panel. You've got the defendant here in stripes. You've got a witness up here. Who knows what the case is? Like, who knows what the trial is about? Um, there's for some reason, a big painting here that says, "Whatever you do, don't get caught." What the, what the heck was I thinking? Sometimes I
The-
look at these, I'm like, what was going through my mind as I was making these?
Me
Um, so you've got a jury panel that's mixed with humans and buildings, and on the, including Chrysler Building and St. Patrick's. I included St. Patrick's a lot. I loved painting that cathedral. I thought it was just a really fun, just a nice design. It worked well
Mm.
from a painterly standpoint. And then, the lawyer who later bought this piece is shown here as the key prosecution. Or is
Oh
he the
wow.
defendant? I don't know. Maybe he's the defendant. Um, and then I remember drawing this laptop, and instead of making it an apple, for some reason I didn't want to get sued, so I turned the logo into a pear. So
Oh.
that's a pear laptop. Um, all right, and this is the closer for this portion of this episode. So this one is called Domestic New York. Ziabella's.
Mm.
And I remember being very specific about having four M's for and three dots. So this one is very personal. It's got a personal history. Um, it's from 2009, 18 by 36 inch. It depicts the buildings in a pizzeria, but the name Ziabella's comes from my mother. My parents had this business back in the day called Ziabella's, which was named after my mom, Belle.
Yes.
And what she used to do was make sausage bread, which was it's this really delicious, kind of like a calzone on steroids. It's sausage meat. And actually, Daniel, you might have heard of this, right? The sausage bread. Uh,
Yes.
but it's delicious, right? And you basically you put it
Sausage
in
roll.
pizza dough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a sausage roll, but she turns it into this crescent moon shape.
Oh nice.
She rolls it, and then
Mm-hmm.
she puts egg white on it, and then bakes it in the oven. And it's just
Que
a
bona.
wonderful. What's that?
Que bona.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, exactly. But your cholesterol will go up just by eating it, but who cares?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to just sort of make a little tribute to her sausage bread, and also pizza, right? Who doesn't love pizza?
Of
I
course.
actually, yeah, so here you have like all the classic, pizzeria, New York pizzeria props that you would see. There's a signed Sinatra portrait, of course. There's a little 9/11 tribute. There's a Yankee flag, and the game is on TV. Right? You've got the Italian flag, the American flag. You've got the dollar signs and the crucifix, which you see on a lot of restaurants, right? Pizzerias. In the back is the Lipstick Building, which is in New York, making the pies. And then another pizzaiola,
Pizzaiolo.
yes, Tossin, he's flipping the dough in the background, and online you have the United Nations building ordering, and behind the UN building you've got the Woolworth building. You can look outside and see sort of one of the streets, right? And actually across the way you see Ray's, which if anyone knows New York pizza history, Ray's Pizza is everywhere. Um, and again, here's my sort of tile, right? Because a lot of pizzerias have just tile everywhere. But the pizza itself, I modeled after my favorite pizzeria in Arizona, believe it or not, which is
Wow.
called Red Devil Pizzeria. So shout out to Red Devil. Um, Love that place, especially when you order it like a little crispy. It's like, oh, it's wonderful.
Mamma
Um,
mia.
exactly. Mamma mia, here we go again. So, so that's it for this round. I mean, what do you think? Did I go overboard?
No, Mr. Sal Cosenza, thank you so much for sharing your paintings to the world. We encourage you to do more and more empowering paintings like this. So, to wrap up our discussion for today, what are the essential materials that you use in doing all these paintings?
I use a lot of photos. I use drawings. So most of these have some sort of sketch, right? So in previous semesters, episodes, see where my
Yes.
head's at? In previous episodes, we talked about how I think it's important to sketch your idea first. So a lot of those have sort of early sketches to go with them. But yeah, just being inspired by anything I saw at the time, I kept a photo of whatever it was and just sort of created a drawer full of inspirational images that I would reference, in addition to just having canvases and paintbrushes and easels and time. um, I was really fortunate at that time to be able to work in the gallery that a lot of those paintings were shown in. So I had a good I still have a good relationship with Art One Gallery. They let me sort of come in and window paint, which I always found to be fun because you meet all kinds of interesting people. I
Yes.
remember meeting one of a famous, actually, for the domestic New York Soaring Affair, the first one we looked at when they're in bed. I was painting that, and in walks in a famous Diamondbacks baseball player who single-handedly defeated the New York Yankees in the World Series. And he's just like walking in, and I'm painting, and I was, because I knew who he was. And I remember asking him, "Do you also paint?" I didn't want to be like, so I'm like, "Do you paint as well?" And he said he can only do stick figures. But I mean, the man beat the Yankees, so who am I to compare myself? But
But we inspired Mr. Sal to your paintings, and we encourage you to do more and more and more and share to the world. So, would you like to plug in something?
uh, if I may, and I appreciate the offer, and
Please.
I'm going to take you up on it. So I recently I updated my website. So my about section has this very serious portrait of me, but
Wow.
but if you check it out under salcosenza.com/about, you'll have links, direct links, Daniel to abstract essay.
Yes.
You'll have links to my book, and then for the first time, you can click on a lot of the paintings here, and it takes you to like a profile of them. This gets into sort of my life so far, my career as a painter, and I just added this list. It's a known list of paintings I've done, and I thought I did like 100 paintings. I mean, they range in quality. The beginning ones are silly, but then they get more serious. I did 182 paintings so far, which
Wow.
I didn't think I did, right?
But you
But here
did.
they are. Uh, but yeah, I invite you all to check that out and stay creative, most importantly.
Yes, people stay creative like Mr. Sal Cosenza and I.
And Daniel. And
Yes.
Mr. Daniel Lucas.
And so, Mr. Sal, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Welcome, people. See you soon.